At $1,500 a month, life feels like survival. At $5,000, it feels like you can finally breathe. At $20,000, it starts to feel like power. But somewhere between struggling to pay your bills and learning how to make real money, something else changes too. Your standards, your relationships, your identity. And by the end of this story, you'll realize income doesn't just change how you live, it changes who you become. At $1,500 a month, income doesn't feel like progress. It feels like a temporary shield against disaster. Every dollar already has a job before it even reaches your account. Rent takes the first bite. Groceries take another. Gas, phone bills, small unexpected expenses, they all line up like they've been waiting for you to get paid. And by the time the month is halfway over, you're already doing the math again. You learn how to live in a constant state of calculation. You compare prices without thinking. You delay buying things you actually need. You tell yourself you're being disciplined, but most of the time, you're just cornered. At this level, income isn't freedom, it's maintenance. It keeps the lights on, keeps you moving, keeps you from falling too far behind. But deep down, you know one bad week could break the entire illusion of stability. At $2,200 a month, the pressure doesn't disappear, but it loosens its grip just enough for you to notice. You're not drowning every single day anymore. You can fill your gas tank without checking your account twice. You can buy groceries without feeling like every extra item is a mistake. A small emergency still hurts, but it no longer feels like a personal collapse. And that changes something inside you. For the first time, income starts to feel less like pure survival and more like relief. Not freedom. Not security. Just relief. The kind that lets your shoulders drop for a second. The kind that makes an ordinary week feel less dangerous. But even here, the ceiling is low. You still know how quickly one repair, one medical bill, or one missed paycheck could put you right back where you started. So you live carefully. You breathe a little easier, but never fully. Because at this level, peace is real, but it is fragile. At $3,000 a month, income begins to feel like something deeper than relief. It starts to feel like dignity. You're still not rich, not even close, but life stops humiliating you in the same small ways. You can pay your bills on time more often than not. You can replace something when it breaks without spiraling. You stop feeling embarrassed by every ordinary expense. And maybe that's the first quiet luxury money ever gives you, not status, not comfort, but the ability to move through life without constantly feeling exposed. At this level, you begin to understand why people chase higher incomes so hard. It's not always greed. Sometimes it's exhaustion. Sometimes it's the simple desire to stop negotiating with reality every day. And that's the hidden shift. The money isn't just changing your bank balance, it's changing the way you carry yourself. You speak a little calmer, sleep a little better, look people in the eye a little longer. Because, for the first time, life feels less like something happening to you, and more like something you can begin to handle. At $4,000 a month, life starts to open up in small but undeniable ways. You notice it in moments that would have felt impossible before. You pay your rent and don't immediately feel the panic of what's left. You go through a week without checking your balance every few hours. You can say yes to dinner without quietly calculating what it will cost you later. The shift is subtle, but it's real. Income begins to feel like breathing room, space, margin, and margin changes everything. It gives you the emotional energy to think beyond the next bill. You start imagining what it would feel like to save consistently, to plan ahead, to stop living with that low, constant hum of financial tension under every part of your life. But this level comes with a strange temptation too, because the moment life gets easier, you want to reward yourself for surviving what came before. A better apartment, better clothes, better weekends. And that is where the next lesson begins. The difference between feeling richer and actually becoming more secure. At $5,000 a month, income starts to feel like the version of adulthood you thought everyone else had figured out years ago. You're not wealthy, but you are no longer living at the mercy of every small inconvenience. A car repair is frustrating, not catastrophic. A weekend trip feels possible. Saving money is no longer a fantasy you revisit. When you're in a hopeful mood, it becomes something you can actually do. And with that comes a deeper emotional shift. You stop seeing money only as protection from pain, and start seeing it as the beginning of choice. You can think longer term. You can be more selective. You can raise your standards, not just for what you buy, but for how you live and what you tolerate. That's what makes this stage so dangerous and so powerful at the same time. Because when you can finally breathe, you're forced to decide what to do with the air. Some people spend it trying to look successful. Others use it to quietly build a future. And that choice will shape everything that comes next. At $7,000 a month, income starts changing more than your lifestyle. It starts changing your standards. Not in a flashy way at first, but in the quiet, private ways that matter more. You become less willing to tolerate chaos just because it's familiar. You stop accepting jobs that drain you, people who only show up when they need something, environments that keep you tense for no reason. That's the strange thing about making more money. It doesn't just improve what you can afford. It sharpens your awareness of what things are costing you besides money, your energy, your focus, your peace. At this level, you begin to understand that a higher income is not only about buying better things, it's about refusing worse conditions. And once that shift happens, you can't really reverse it. You start protecting your time more carefully, speaking more directly, choosing more intentionally. Because now income doesn't just feel like relief. It feels like a line in the sand between the life you used to endure and the life you no longer want to settle for. At $10,000 a month, income begins to feel undeniably powerful, not because it makes you rich, but because it gives you options, real ones. For the first time, you can look at a situation and know you are not trapped inside it. You can leave the job that pays well, but slowly empties you out. You can move to a better place, help your family without wrecking your own finances, take a risk that would have felt reckless before. And that changes the way you move through the world. You stop reacting to life as if every decision is a survival decision. You start thinking in terms of direction, alignment, intention. But this is also where a new illusion appears. Because having options can make you feel like you've arrived, when really you've only entered a more comfortable version of the same game. The bills are bigger now. The expectations are higher. The image of your life starts to matter more. And if you are not careful, income at this level can buy you freedom on the surface, while quietly locking you into a more expensive form of dependence underneath. At $15,000 a month, income starts to feel like control. Not complete control, not the kind that makes life simple, but enough to change your posture. You stop waking up with that old reflex of financial caution running quietly in the background. You no longer need every week to go right in order for your life to stay intact. There is room now. Room to plan, room to recover, room to make decisions that are not driven by panic. And that room changes you. You begin to notice how much of your old personality was shaped by pressure. How much patience was really fear. How much humility was really dependence. At this level, money begins to do something subtle but powerful. It gives you the ability to design your life instead of constantly reacting to it. But control has a hidden side. The more control you gain, the less tolerant you become of randomness, inefficiency, and people who waste your time. You become sharper, more selective, more exact, and somewhere in that shift, income stops feeling like comfort and starts feeling like authority over your own environment. At $20,000 a month, income begins to feel like power, not loud power, not cinematic power, but the quiet kind that changes how the world responds to you. Problems that used to take weeks to absorb can now be solved in a day. You can pay for speed, pay for convenience, pay to avoid friction. And when life becomes easier to move through, it is tempting to believe you have mastered it. That is the seduction of this level. Money no longer just protects you from instability. It starts shaping reality around your preferences. Your home improves, your circle changes, your standards rise again. People listen more closely when you speak. Opportunities come closer. But power always introduces a test of character. Because once income gives you the ability to influence more, you have to decide what kind of person you become while holding it. Some people grow calmer, some grow colder. Some confuse being hard to reach with being important. And that is the turning point here. At $20,000 a month, the real story is no longer what money can do for you. It is what it begins to do to you. At $30,000 a month, income starts to create a kind of distance you never imagined when you were younger and desperate for more of it. Not just distance from struggle, but distance from the version of life that once defined you. The habits, the conversations, the urgency, even the things people around you complain about, they begin to feel strangely far away. You can still remember that life perfectly, but you no longer live inside its emotional weather. And that changes your relationships in ways money alone cannot explain. Some people admire what you built, some become uncomfortable around it. Some start treating your success like luck, because admitting what it took would force them to confront their own choices. At this level, income doesn't just improve your circumstances, it alters your social gravity. The room shifts when you enter it. Expectations shift too. People assume you're less stressed, less human, less affected by ordinary problems. But what they don't see is that distance cuts both ways. The higher your income climbs, the harder it becomes to explain your reality to people who still think money only solves problems, instead of replacing them with larger, quieter ones. At $50,000 a month, income begins to feel like velocity. Life moves faster because your decisions move faster. You no longer spend much time waiting for permission, waiting for the right moment, or waiting until you can afford to act. You can enter opportunities quickly, solve problems quickly, recover from mistakes quickly. That kind of speed is intoxicating. It makes you feel almost weightless, as if momentum itself has become part of your identity. And maybe that's the danger. Because once life starts moving at this pace, stillness begins to feel unnatural. Rest feels unproductive. Simplicity feels suspicious. You become someone who is always optimizing, reallocating, expanding, making the next move before the current one has fully settled. At this level, income gives you access to a life that looks powerful from the outside, and in many ways it is. But it also demands a different kind of discipline. Because when money is coming in that fast, the real risk is no longer scarcity. It is acceleration without reflection. It is becoming so good at building a bigger life that you never stop to ask whether the speed itself is costing you something you can't buy back. At $80,000 a month, income stops feeling like something you earn and starts feeling like something you structure. The game changes completely here. You are no longer thinking in terms of paychecks, even large ones. You are thinking in systems, in allocation, in how money moves when you are not paying attention to it. At this level, income begins to feel like architecture. You are designing frameworks that hold weight. Investments, companies, teams, processes, decisions that multiply rather than merely add. And that shift changes the way you see almost everything. You become less impressed by appearances and more interested in infrastructure. Less interested in what someone has, more interested in how their machine works. But architecture has its own emotional cost. The bigger the structure, the more of your mind it occupies. You do not just have more money now, you have more consequences, more moving parts, more people affected by your judgment. At this level, income feels powerful not because it buys luxury, but because it lets you build something larger than your own labor. And once you experience that, ordinary success starts to feel very small. At $100,000 a month and beyond, income no longer feels exciting in the way people imagine from the outside. It feels heavy, not because the money itself is a burden, but because everything attached to it carries more gravity. Your decisions matter more. Your mistakes cost more. Your presence changes the room before you even say a word. People project onto you now. Some see freedom, some see status, some see a target, and almost none of them see the actual texture of your life. The pressure of staying sharp, the responsibility of maintaining what you built, the quiet fear of becoming someone whose value is measured only by output. That is the hidden truth of very high income. It can make you more capable, more protected, more influential, but it can also make you harder to reach, harder to understand, and sometimes harder to recognize in the mirror. At this level, income feels like weight. Because the money is large, yes, but the real heaviness comes from the question underneath it. Now that you can have almost anything, who are you becoming while holding all of it? There comes a point where income stops feeling like a result and starts feeling like an environment. You live inside it long enough, and it begins to shape your instincts, your reactions, even your sense of what is normal. Things that once felt expensive now feel efficient. Things that once felt generous now feel expected. You become harder to impress, but also harder to surprise. And that is the hidden shift no one talks about. Very high income does not just upgrade your lifestyle. It quietly rewires your identity. You think in larger numbers, wider consequences, longer horizons. You become more selective with people, more protective of your energy, more suspicious of anything that wastes your time. From the outside, it can look like confidence. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is just adaptation. At this level, the real danger is not losing the money. It is forgetting how much of yourself has been reorganized around having it, and how different you have become from the person who once thought more income would simply make life easier. And then one day, almost without ceremony, income stops being the thing you think about most. Not because it disappears, and not because it no longer matters, but because another question rises above it. What is all of this actually for? That is the question waiting on the other side of ambition. You spent years believing that the next level of income would bring clarity, peace, certainty. And in some ways, it did. It removed pressure. It gave you options. It made life smoother, faster, quieter. But it also stripped away excuses. You can no longer blame your life on lack. You can no longer say, I'll become who I want to be once I make enough. Enough has arrived, or something close to it. And now you are left alone with the deeper truth. Income can change your conditions. It can expand your reach. It can even reshape your identity. But it cannot tell you what any of it means. And that is where the story turns. Because eventually, the real measure of a life is not how much came in it, is what kind of person was built while it did. In the end, income stops feeling like a ladder and starts feeling like a mirror. At the beginning, it measured how close you were to the edge. Later, it measured how much room you had to breathe. Then it became choice, control, power, speed, structure, weight. But none of those meanings stayed fixed, because you did not stay fixed. Every level of income revealed a different version of you. The frightened version, the disciplined version, the ambitious version, the sharper, colder, more selective version. The one who learned to protect time. The one who learned that comfort can become its own cage. The one who discovered that money changes your circumstances long before it changes your questions. And maybe that is the deepest truth of all. Income never simply upgraded your life. It kept exposing what you valued, what you feared, what you were willing to trade, and what you slowly became in pursuit of more. By the end, the number matters less than the person standing next to it. So, that is what life looks like at every level of income. At first, it feels like survival, then relief, then dignity, then breathing room. Then, standards, choice, control, power, distance, velocity, architecture, weight. And somewhere along that climb, the story stops being about money alone. Because income changes what you can buy, yes, but more importantly, it changes what you can tolerate, what you expect, what you protect, and who you become when life finally stops saying no. That is why two people can make the same amount and live in completely different worlds. The real difference is never just the number. It is the identity formed around it, the mindset, the wounds, the discipline, the hunger, the cost. In the end, income is not just a financial measure. It is an emotional one, a psychological one, a human one. And if you follow it all the way to the top, you realize something most people never say out loud. The goal was never only to make more. The goal was to build a life that still feels like yours once you do.